Oh no.
Stretch for time, stretch for time, stretch for time.
There we go. It finally unmuted me. Yay!
Stretch for time, stretch for time, stretch for time.
It's a great way to start the episode. I can't even unmute myself. So welcome to the I'm going to rephrase that because I've always wanted to call the show me. Trina's Retro Repair Roundup. Mwahaha! And since I'm the only host here, I can do that. Welcome to the Retro Repair Roundup. I don't know what episode 35. I'm like, I don't even know what episode this is. Tonight, it's a wee bit of a difference. We have me hosting. We've kicked out all the cis guys on Father's Day, which is highly ironic. I didn't realize I did not realize this when I was planning it. It just totally worked out.
That's funny.
And I have the support from the Joe, Ron, and Javier, who are my other co-hosts on the show, to do this. I suggested it, and they said, "Let's do this," and I went, "Okay." And then I started reaching out to all these fabulous people that are here with me tonight. And speaking of fabulous people, I'm going to do a quick intro on myself. I'm Trina of Trina's Technobabble. You can find me streaming periodically whenever I get an interesting computer that I want to work on. Sometimes I'm going to stream. I've stopped streaming PC repairs because every PC repair lately I've gotten in has been a 5-second repair. And then I'm like, well, that's fun. Now what do I do? So I stopped doing that. You can also find me on Twitter under Technobabble T. And speaking of which, Maya, I sent you I started following you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you
retweeted.
You retweeted, and I'm like, oh, I'm not following you. Let me follow you.
That's fair. I wasn't following you either, and I should be. We'll
Yeah,
figure that out.
I didn't realize we weren't following each other. I don't know who I follow anymore. All I know is that lately it's been a bunch of more not safe for work photos that seems to keep popping up on my feed, and I don't know why, but we will go into that. And I think I'm not the only one who's having that issue, but it's weird. So we're gonna go do a round table, starting with Kat. Introduce ourselves and where people can find you. Preferred pronouns. I'm just making sure that I'm reading my notes here. Yeah, and take it away.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kat. I am a Twitch streamer. I do stupid technology tricks to stream games from actual hardware. Right now, we're working our way through on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern through the Nox Arceus expansion, Lord of Storms. It's going badly, in case anybody's wondering. I am really bad at this. This is what passes for a map in my world. This is supposed to be the underground. And yeah, so twitch.tv/Lady I'm also Lady Iluros there on pretty much all of the socials. On Twitter, I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm at mastodon.social. I mostly do Apple II. I'm also on the planning committee for Kansas Fest, which is coming up in like a month, and I'm very excited. So I do a lot of Apple, but I do also some Mac. I have a 486. I have Nintendo, Super Nintendo, whatever I feel like doing. And in my day job to pay for all this, I am an educator.
You're up next, Evie.
Okay, well, I'm Evie. I do this thing called Backbit. Basically, I make products and I sell them to people. So my main product is the Backbit cartridge, which has, I think, 27 adapters. So almost any vintage computer or game system you can think of, you can plug my cartridge into. And wait, hold on. This is...
Here, I'm going to make it big for a sec.
Okay.
Okay. Boom.
Okay, that's the cartridge. Okay. Anyway, And then I also make this thing called the chip tester, where you can put a chip in and see if it's working or not. And it works with a wide variety of chips. Basically, if anyone emails me or goes on my forum and says, "Can you test this chip?" If I have any way to get that chip, I will make it happen. I respond to user feedback. Okay, I had this whole former career. Oh, hello. I had this whole former career as a software engineer, and that ended about 5 years ago. And I've been studying hardware since. And what else am I supposed to say here?
Whatever you want to talk, whatever you want to say. No pressure.
Well, I have a few YouTube videos at Evie's Review, REVUE. They're not quite as exciting as Taylor and Amy's videos, but I do my best.
I don't think anyone's videos are exciting as theirs. Get really into it.
Cool.
And
Well,
speaking of Taylor and Amy,
yeah.
batter's up.
Ahoy. I'm Taylor, and that's Amy.
Hey, I have laryngitis.
We've been best friends since 1984, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But we have all the same nostalgia. So I've been playing with retro computers since they were just called computers.
Mm-hmm.
And basically about, a year and a half ago, we decided to do a YouTube channel.
So we did.
So we have.
And it's just like things that we were doing anyway, but then we just decided to film it one day.
Right. So we're at Taylor Amy Show, I think, on Twitter, and the Taylor and Amy Show on YouTube. So we are now retro YouTubers. Mostly it's kind of two different. I'm either going to take something apart and try to upgrade it and or fix it.
Or breaking it.
Or break it. Or we're going to play with, actually like software and play a game. And for games, we usually try to dress up as the theme of the game. And we are huge fans of Eevee's BackBit Pro because we use it on just about everything to get, to use modern storage on these old computers, as you can see behind me.
And happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride!
Yeah, happy Pride.
Mm-hmm. We're born. We're otherwise we're born.
So
Next
boring.
person.
All right.
She, her.
Next,
Yeah,
next,
that's it.
next self-proclaimed boring person. Amber, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Amber. I run a little tiny YouTube channel called Tech Ambrosia, and I mostly focus on some retro tech, but I'm also doing things like low-end computing, VR, and 3D printing. I've recently released the 3D printable test benches. I know Trina had one over there. I've got one here. These are 3D prints that you can just throw a computer inside, power supply on this side, motherboard on this side, and yeah, you can just download the model and 3D print it on your own printer. Anyway, day job is as an implementation specialist in the enterprise content management area. It's a super boring career, but it pays the bills and lets me play with lots of old computers that I missed. I knew it. Somebody was going to say it. I did not make any ambrosia. I always, every single time, I'm trying to drink healthy, drink water, not the ambrosia. It's very highly caloric. I just need to remember to make my green ambrosia drink every single time I'm on camera. All right. Anyway, that's me. Pronouns are she, her, and yeah. Oh, you can find me on Mastodon, Twitter, also on YouTube. I stream every week on Saturday, 4 o'clock Mountain Time. That's in the afternoon. So, hello.
You're up to bat, Maya. Come on down.
All right, sounds good. Hi, I'm Maya. I am a little bit different from everybody here in the sense that I'm not really a content creator as such. I've just sort of always been on the outskirts of this community, helping in whatever way that I can. I do have a small YouTube channel. I don't use it for computer stuff as much as I use it for sort of retail archaeology stuff. It's and also uploading random VHS tapes I find at the thrift store. More so that than anything else, to be completely fair. Most of what I do is going to be on Twitter, which is at Maya King PA. That's also, and you can also find me on Blue Sky. I think that's the only other social media I'm actually using at the moment, so I'll use that. Day job. Normally, I am actually working in political organizing, which also does set me apart from a lot of folks here, I recognize. But it's it is still a boring job. So I will fit myself in with the rest of the boring community there. Trying to think what else I have to say. Nothing. Pronouns are she, they.
Amy.
Couldn't find the unmute button. Hi, I'm Amy Lindian. I'm not really into retro computers. I'm married to a retro computer nut. She's in the other room there, but I've used computers that are retro now, like IBM 360 and Wangs and ancient computers like that, because I'm ancient. But anyway, my interests are that not in the day job. I am into electronic music. I am building a Euro rack right now, and that's my gig. That's my interest. For a day job, I am a fire suppression systems engineer, and I'm currently serving as a systems engineering supervisor at Kennedy Space Center. And I lead a team of about 35 engineers, and we keep the plant running, and we keep all the ground service equipment running, and we support the Artemis program and the launches and some of the SpaceX stuff. So that's me.
That's very
Just
cool.
generally boring.
That is super, super cool.
And the other half, Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne, she, her. My interests have been computers since high school, back in some different decade. And like Amy, I've used a lot of different computers that are now considered retro computers or more ancient. And I kind of like them. So I've been restoring some. I'm an IBM girl, unlike some of the Apple folks here. I just happen to have some PS2s back here on this bench, but I've got older IBMs over here and some old compacts. My first desktop computer was the original Compact Desk Pro 8086. And on my day job, my career day job was as American diplomat for the State Department, and part of that was in diplomatic security. I did engineering for them, and then I retired, and I've been working for a small electronics company called Adafruit, and they make all kinds of nifty things, a lot of microcontroller boards. This one has a USB host, and this one has HDMI. So I'm hoping to use some of this kind of tech to interface with the retro tech to give it capabilities. Like, say you want HDMI video output on your original IBM PC. You just slip in a card and it outputs, text or something. So that's me.
And finally, all the way from the other side of the pond, we have Sonic, who is, I think, barely staying awake at this point. It's just after, it's going on quarter after
the
one.
Doing okay. I'm a little bit more awake now. But yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Sonic B. I have Twitter at RetroCon. Most of the time, I collect really random retro hardware. I'm obsessed with everything to do with them. Sometimes I just wreck old hardware a little bit by repainting and whatever. Yeah.
Amazing,
Mixed bag, really,
amazing.
whether
Amy,
people like that or not, but it's something I like to do. My day job is to do with CAD design and traffic lights. It's horribly boring. And occasionally I do game stalls, gaming events when I can. But yeah, time permitting. And yeah, that's me. Pronouns are they, them. Cheers.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I work at Sick Kids Hospital building. I was brought on because they're moving to a new building. They've built this huge, massive building, and they're taking away desktops from a lot of people. So we were brought in to build 3,000 laptops. And that's what we're doing. There's a team of 4 of us doing that, as well as initially I was only brought to build them, and I didn't have to interface with people. And I'm like, yay, don't have to deal with people. And then they're like, wait, we're just going to have the 4 of you build them and deploy them. And I'm like, oh, that means I got users to answer questions too. But, and we're also been upgrading a lot of the desktops for those departments that aren't moving. I just finished doing an entire wing of about 50 some odd computers by the time you factor in their mobile devices, upgrading them all to SSDs from spitting rust drives that have been on for years and are dying at this point. Like been on for 2 to 3 years, and well, spitting drives wear out. So that's me. So I also have my own side business. So I don't get away from computers much. So let's start with some of the questions. By the way, if anybody has any questions, yes, Ryan, there are cute nurses that work at the hospital, but we won't go into that. So if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to copy them over, put them in a Word doc or something, and we'll go through them towards the end tonight. Probably in about another, just to give everybody a heads up, we usually wrap up around 9:30 Eastern, so another hour and math is horrible. Hour and 10 minutes. I'm looking at the time going, add, do addition. This is why I don't work with math.
That's a mood.
So I guess we'll start with Kat. I don't know if you have the questions in front of you, if you want to just kind of cover them all. Haha.
I like paper. I teach English. I kill trees.
I work at a hospital that we print everything off. Like we have.
Yes. My students have actually often say they like, we want paper. Please don't give us stuff. Our Chromebooks are terrible, and please just give us paper. Even though the administration is like, the classroom of the future and Chromebooks, and everybody has a Chromebook, and the kids are like, we just write with pencil and paper, and I'm like, yes. Okay, so guest spotlight. I guess I will just go down the list.
Yeah, just go down the list on that.
I will read from the 3x5 card. I have my contacts in, so I will hold it way out here somewhere. How did I start getting into the geeky side? I think I always was attracted to the shiny box that did things when you press buttons. I remember being in kindergarten, I think, and they got like 2 or 3 of us went down to the cafeteria, and our principal had an Apple. It was an Apple II. It was playing Ernie's Quiz, and I was just like, that is the coolest freaking thing I've ever seen. My dad was a shop teacher, tech ed teacher, so he kind of knew what was up. We had a 2C. He got us a 2C secondhand when I was in 5th grade. My family was playing games on it. I was trying to program the thing. Just have always been a gamer. The Atari was the coolest thing I'd ever. The Atari, I could press buttons and do the thing, and Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And then, I went to college, got a 486 for graduation. So that'll totally give you tell you how old I am. I got a 486 for my high school graduation. Not the one I'm working on, unfortunately. That died a long time ago. And a few years back, I was just like, retro computing. Yeah, it would be really cool to have an Apple. And I found out Kansas Fest exists. And then I went to Kansas Fest, and now I have a room full of old tech, and I'm on the planning committee for the event. And about in 2019, I said the 3 most dangerous words you could say at Kansas Fest, which were "I wonder if." And the
Uh-oh.
rest of that sentence was, "Can you, if I could ever figure out how to stream to Twitch from hardware?" Yes. Some weird technical hoops with upscale, all kinds of different upscalers and craziness. But yes, I stream. I figured out I've used stream for Apple IIs. Yes, I've streamed for my Nintendo. I've streamed for my Super Nintendo. I've streamed for my G3. I've probably streamed from other things that I can't remember right now. But yeah, I always was like, I'm a Twitch streamer. And yes, my students have found my Twitch channel, and they think I'm completely boring because I don't stream Call of Duty. But that's where I got what keeps me interested in tech is I like to perform. I'm a semi-recovered drama kid, so finding new things to do to then put on my stream is probably what keeps me going. What interests in retro computers? Apple, because that's what I grew up with. And it's I have determined that this is my midlife crisis, because I want all of the computers I couldn't have when I was a kid. How do I feel the tech community? You are part of treatment toward women. I'm not really I'm Kat, and I go to Kansas Fest, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's her from the Twitch with the ears." Because yes, I have ears. I wear ears occasionally at Kansas Fest, and everybody just. I've never really felt discriminated against. It's just kind of always been done. But my very limited contact with the tech community, because my day job, I've never really been discriminated against because of my gender in the workforce, because in education we're kind of the majority. Even at the secondary level that I teach at. So I feel bad that I can't. That's the meat of this whole thing, and I have no good answers because I'm just a bouncy, happy person who, trips her way through life in her happy, ganky way.
But hey, that's good that you
Yes.
have nothing to.
I have
complain
nothing.
about,
I feel bad. I'm like, oh, it's gonna make me feel like such a I'm gonna look like such a
No,
dimwit. It's but I don't float in spaces where that happens to me.
oh, and by the way, Javier said he's been having a midlife crisis for 10 years, so don't feel bad.
Well, I will see, Javier. I will see you in a month, and we can retro bright our midlife crisis together. But yeah, that's me. Just living the dream.
All right, Evie.
All right. Yeah. So how did I get into the geeky side? Well, it's pretty much since birth. The story is that when I was about 5 years old, I would jump out of the bath and run directly to the Timex Sinclair 1000, and with pretty much disregard for anything else that was happening or that was supposed to happen. And then after that, my brother had a paper route and he got a Commodore 64. So we shared that. And then, that's like most of my childhood. Okay, what keeps you interested in tech? So, obviously, career in computer programming. And then I would say in 2000s or so, I was, I had fun with emulation, and that was a little bit of a thrill for me. But at some point, it just, I don't know, the whole retro things just didn't feel as exciting anymore, and didn't feel as connected to what I was currently doing. Like my first job out of college, I was working on cell phones, mobile phones. This was before iPhone and before Android, so it was J2ME and Brew. And I wrote the first mobile port of Gauntlet. And of course, then a couple years later, Electronic Arts came along and made a better version, but that's because the phones were more powerful. And that was like my career basically just went downhill from there, because as long as it was connected to the things I grew up with, the fun things I grew up with, the games I grew up with, it was exciting. And then as it got into like Web 2.0 and just like, testing phone cameras, everything just got really boring, and to the point where I was so bored and uninterested in the work I was doing that I guess my personality started coming off as bored and uninterested, and it's not really kind of attitude that lets you keep a job. But then I discovered hardware, and the thing is, my dad was an electrical engineer. Are you laughing, Taylor and Amy? Oh my god. My dad's an electrical engineer, so I assumed like my dad could like mentor me in electronics, and he not so much mentored me, he sort of just like egged me on of like, oh yeah, just keep doing that stuff. Like you're really good at that. Just keep doing it. And so tinkering turned into, oh, there are these products that people sell. You can get a little drive for your Commodore, you can get a cartridge for your Commodore. And that turned into, well, yeah, these are functional, but I want a cartridge that can do this and that. I want a cartridge that's just really easy to use and that you don't have to program and that you can just play things right away. And so that was the Backbit cartridge. And I digress. I'm probably going. Okay, so I'm probably getting a little too caught up in my story, but I'll finish the story part and get back to the list here. But basically, the Backbit cartridge, that was like the first main thing that I worked on for Commodore, and then I said, what if I could do this on other computers? And then it kind of branched out from there. Okay, so what keeps you interested in tech? Well, it's basically my whole life. What interests you in retro computers? Because they were the ones I grew up with, and they're basically all the ones that I saw in I saw in Run magazine and Compute magazine, and I said, well, it would be cool if I have that, but I don't have that. And so now, I have access to just basically having everything, so why not? How do you find tech community treats women? Well, my critique, I think there are a lot of avenues for women in tech nowadays. However, women in engineering and electrical engineering specifically, I think there are probably a lot less opportunities. I took an electrical engineering class at community college, and there was like maybe in each of the classes I took, there were maybe like 1 or 2 women in the whole class. So, and then from what I hear, women tend to drop out a lot. Yeah, so I think that in itself probably could provide some insight into why why women aren't in tech. Just look at the schools and look at career paths. Social media, I would say, is kind of the larger issue, at least today. And I really don't do much in the way of social media, and especially since the whole Elon Musk Twitter thing, I basically just became even less interested in social media. And so for me, tech community is like lesbians who tech. It's like all of you. It's like, whatever I can find out there. And but also like Vintage Computer Festival, I have no problem with that. Like they're very welcoming, and there's always a few freaks there. And speaking of which, I'm going to VCF West coming August, so I'll be there and I'll show off a few things. And discrimination, yeah. Let's see, gender transition in the workplace. I like to say the hardest part of my gender transition was my work transition, because basically my gender transition kind of wrecked my whole career, but full circle, now I'm doing kind of more what I really want to do anyway. So yeah, I'm not in a place where I'm like real bitter or anything. So, yeah.
All right, Taylor and Amy, batter's up.
Okay, Amy, how did you start getting into the geeky side?
Well, Taylor, let me tell you about that. Oh,
I think we need to just echo what the people who have spoken before us said when they said "born this way." So we got Apple IIe's in the computer lab in second grade.
Yep.
That was probably our first computer stuff, and then later both of our families happened to buy Tandy 1000s. But gaming started way earlier than that because you had an Atari 2600 and I had an Odyssey 2. So we would play whichever one was at the house where we were, and so we did a lot of good memories of playing video games. And then Amy got a Nintendo, and I mean, just it goes from there. So woo, hey Sloopy. So we've just sort of never not been interested. Would you agree?
yeah. Well, and so we were lucky enough to know each other since 1984, and we would validate each other. So we would go to Radio Shack and buy robot kits. We would get constructs.
If Amy said it was cool, I knew that meant it was cool.
Right. So
and vice versa.
We just assumed everyone was strapping model rockets.
We were terribly wrong about all of that.
Constructs and shooting them down the street,
but we reinforced each other's right. Model rockets.
So we thought it was normal what we were doing.
That's what you do,
which was
the cool things.
Very nerdy.
So,
but we just were like, well, she's doing it, so I'm doing it. So it was fine.
Yeah. The retro computers are just the nostalgia. That's the era. And I've we have also collected a handful of retro computers that we didn't have when we were kids. The tech community you are part of, that will be retro tech, treatment of women, we've been pleasantly surprised.
That's true.
We were, I'm like, hey Amy, let's do a YouTube channel. And then the conversation happened where we're just like, there are not a ton of women in this space. Every once in a while, right, there's a YouTube comment that I just delete. But most of the time it's been, I feel like it's been pretty great. The people at Coco Nation and Coco Fest, they've been very welcoming to us.
And kind of adopted us early on. I remember we were on the Coco Nation, now Coco Talk then, when we crossed 256 subscribers.
Yeah, so.
And they were very sweet. But we had a whole conversation. I'm sure everyone's had some version of this.
Yeah.
We're like, do we want to do this? Is this going to expose us to a bunch of hatred and, just.
Knock on wood.
But so.
I haven't gotten a ton of it. Now, I will say, we have gotten comments like it's, some real women in tech. And we just shut that right down. So that they stopped saying that.
Yeah, we just ignored it
because we happen to be cisgender.
Exactly. Forget it.
So that's us.
Well,
next.
But
I
think that's Yep. That's good.
That's the question.
Any other questions?
I have been because I can't copy and paste because it just lets me show. So I've been hand scribbling down questions as we've been going along. So
okay.
Yeah. So we do have questions at the end. All right, Amber.
All right. Hello. Yeah. I got some real bad comments on my YouTube channel. So let's see. Starting out with at the very beginning, how did you get started in the geeky side? I can point to my very earliest memory with an 8-bit home computer. Let's see if I can get this to work here. One sec. This is gonna be. Let's do it live. It's gonna be bad. Oh, almost. Hang on. My cameras don't like me. Here we go. If you've ever
Here, let's make you big.
this is a game on the Apple II called Sticky Bear's ABCs. This is the very first computer game I remember playing, and this was you can see copyright 1982. This would have been probably around 85 or so, 86. This is what got me into computers, like just seeing this thing, and it's a very simple, very simple thing, in that you press a key on your Apple II keyboard and it loads on the disk for a bit, and then tells you what key you pressed, so you can learn the alphabet. Very simple. I loved it. I was completely addicted as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. And that's what started it all for me. And now it's making horrible noises in my headphones. I need to turn it off. There we go. That's what started me on the geeky side, and I never looked back, honestly. Like, I had a number of old computers over the years. I had a VIC-20 at one point. I had a VIC-20 once it was considered an old computer, so I didn't use the VIC-20 or the C64 in its heyday. But at one point, I was also gifted a 486 in high school. So again, that would have been around 97. So that was again pretty late in the 486's lifetime. But that really. That set the bug, that planted the seed, because I could do whatever I wanted with that PC. It was just an open 16-bit ISA 486, and it was late enough in the cycle that I could bicycle down to a computer store. You remember those? A physical computer store, and buy expansion cards for it for $5 a card, and it was fantastic. It completely addicted me to the geeky side of things. So that was how I got started. What keeps me interested today is a number of things. Honestly, every year I keep wondering, well, is this going to be the year that I get sick and tired of tech? Well, every year there's something weird that comes along. Whether it's mobile platforms, mobile OSs, the resurgence of the Renaissance period of BOS with Haiku. I know Action Retro did a video on that just recently. I've been following the Haiku project since it started. I've been a monthly contributor to it for a while, and just seeing it really blossom now and get some mainstream attention is really cool. But also things like the dreaded AI and the large language models, the stuff that you can do beyond just the publicly facing chatbot implementations, things that a large language model can do are really interesting when you consider natural language processing. It's just kind of an interesting side of tech. As far as what interests me in retro computers, if you're into it, I am into it. I love retro computers because of their simplicity. Computers today, it's kind of sad, because kids today, a computer to them is an iPad, right? You hit the button, and you turn it on, it shows the Apple logo, and then you have your apps, and that's it. That's all they know about a computer. You tap the app and you do the app. They don't know anything about what's behind the scenes of it. They don't know how many cores the processor is. They don't know what the file system is. They don't know, many don't have a concept of files. Just save this to the Google Drive and you can find it later. Where's my file? I don't know, I just search for it. I don't know what that's going to do for up and coming tech generations. Are we building this gulf between the tech savvy and the tech consumer? Clearly we have been, and is it getting far enough that it's going to become a bad thing? We're going to end up having a problem with exploitation of our tech consumers? I don't know. All I know is I love retro computers because you can follow them from power on all the way through every single step that they run until you're at a prompt to do something. And even with an old Windows 95 machine, it doesn't load Windows 95 unless it has an automatic prompt that says win and hits enter. Right? You can remove that from your config.sys or your, not your config.sys, but your ms-dos.sys, and your Windows 95 machine won't load Windows 95. It'll go straight into DOS and wait for you to tell it to do something. And I think that's that's the essence of computing to me, right? Like a computer should do what you want it to do, not only what you want it to do. So that's what interests me in retro computers and keeps me interested in retro computers. It's just a simpler time. Whew, all right, so how do I find the tech community I'm a part of treats women? So I have my feet in two worlds. I have my feet in several worlds. I have a lot of feet. My day job, I'm in, corporate IT. I do enterprise content management. It's a field largely dominated by men, and cis men, straight cis men, even even LGBT cis men are obviously LGB. G or B, cis men, not real common in my field. It's not without its problems. It's not like every day I log in I have to deal with bigotry, but like every once in a while you'll have to talk to a customer who is a little bit sexist or a little bit weird. Maybe makes too many advances towards you. The advantage I have is that my phone voice and my Zoom voice is pretty well passing. I am trans. I trained my voice for about a year before I actually did a social transition, and that's been a big advantage to me. So I don't usually get misgendered on the phone, and that does tend to disarm a lot of the hate and bigotry that you'll find as a trans woman in tech. But it does, of course, then open you up to the kind of hate and bigotry that you'd have if you were a cis woman, with a cis passing voice, of course. So it's not like I have so many things to say about it, but I don't want to take up a ton of time. Mostly it's fine. I've kind of fallen into an industry and a company that I work for that's been pretty decent. I have a pretty okay time at work despite the boringness of the job. And then, of course, there's the YouTube side of things where I get some real awful comments, especially if I, with my feminine voice, and I apologize, I'm not doing it very, very good justice, but, once I show a product on screen with my hands, and you see these big old pobs here, and you hear my voice, it inspires a certain type of person to leave an awful comment on whatever content I've created. So I delete a lot of comments off of my YouTube channel, and it's pretty terrible, I'll be honest. It's part of the reason I don't make as many YouTube videos as I want to make, because I just kind of get locked in anxiety about that. So I guess that kind of covers the feeling discriminated as well, because it's not a walk in the park. It's far from a walk in the park. Anyway, sorry. Move on. I'm done.
I just want to touch on two things that you had mentioned. So Proto Jedi, who is in the chat here,
Yes.
had picked up a bunch of Apple IIes, one of these days I'm hoping Canada Post will realize I'm in Toronto and not in Mississauga, because they keep bouncing my parcel back and forth, which is getting frustrating, but I have opened up a ticket with them, so I'm hoping that will be resolved soon. And he had the entire collection, because this came from, apparently somebody must have worked at a school. They had all the bear, I forget the first name of that. They had all the
Sticky Bear stuff. Yeah.
Sticky Bear, yeah, he had 7 or 8 games for Sticky Bear.
Amazing.
And some of them you can't find online at all. So
yeah, there's only a few that are archived.
Yeah, and
That's
Sean
amazing.
of Action Retro is watching this on the Linux distro. So that you mentioned.
Hello.
Which my brain tonight is not functioning, so I can't remember the name of the Linux distro, and I do apologize about that. But yeah, all I can think of is Slackware, and I know it's not Slackware. So.
No, Slackware was what I put on my parents' Cyrix back in high school.
Nice.
Downloading the packages over a 28.8 modem. It was pretty terrible. It was very slow.
All right, Maya, your turn.
Okay, excellent. So, first question: how did I get started on these things? Same as everybody else, I've just kind of always been that way. the first computer I ever used, and I'm very, very sorry to everybody for what I'm about to say, but the very first computer I ever used in preschool was a Revision A Bondi iMac G3, which does set me apart from every other example that has been heard so far. I'm 24, so for me, the whole growing up around computing looked a lot different. This is, the early, not necessarily the early .com days, but like the early mass .com days, I guess I would want to say. So, and I don't know, I think I do agree that the simplicity of retro computing was some of what drew me to it. And I will say I haven't been into retro computing since I was like 10 or 11. So it's changed a lot even for me in the much shorter window that I've been involved here. But I have just kind of always been that way. And, I got my first computer that I owned myself. I actually bought with my own money at the age of the age of 8. It was just kind of an off the shelf, underpowered Intel Mobile Toshiba laptop. This was actually in the early Windows Vista days. So again, I'm sorry for anybody who feels old hearing this. And since then, the freedom of being able to tinker with my own stuff has always helped. The first piece of retro computing gear I got wasn't for a couple of years later, and I actually can't think of what it might be. I did get a G3 iMac, a slot loading model, so not what I had used, in preschool many years ago. But that wasn't probably until 2012, so a few years beyond that.
So we might be getting you a Mac SE.
That's actually, you don't have to do that because you don't have to do that. I have one. It's just on the other side of the room. I have a decently sized collection. I've just never, I just didn't experience it at the time. The Apple IIe setup is right to my left. I promise. Actually, yeah. So I'm just trying to think. So yeah, one of the reasons that I got into it and collected what I did was because, a lot of the stuff that I grew up with, even if it was iconic, like the G3 iMac or even the G3 iBook, the clamshell one, not the white one, because the white ones are like you can get for $30 and the clamshells are $300. One of the reasons I got into it so much was because whenever I got into it, they were incredibly cheap and easy to collect. Because they were getting thrown out more often than not. So that's where I built up a lot of the collection that I have now. I've just had it for 10 years, 10 or more years. I always tend to sound like I have more experience than I actually do. And I never want to come off as, somebody who, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase what I want to say here. Like, I don't have as much experience as everybody here, and that's okay. And I just try not to come off as somebody who sounds like a know-it-all because I have invested countless hours reading articles and watching videos on these things.
It's okay, Maya. The time keeps on slipping into the future. I think someone wrote a song about it.
They did. That's
That's right.
Excuse me. I have a lingering cough, and I'm not sure why. What keeps me interested in tech is, I don't know, sort of a lot of the appeal of the growing hobbyist scene. With regards to retro tech, the growing hobbyist scene is absolutely what keeps me interested in it, because there's so much more that you can do with, say, an 8-bit machine now than 10 years ago. The amount of homebrew applications and software has grown significantly, and that's absolutely amazing. And that's even true up through some of the later 90s stuff, because even early 2000 stuff, PowerPC Macs especially, because whenever I got into them, they were still kind of on the tail end of mainstream support, like Mac OS 10.6, 10.7 era. So, I had a G5 that I got for like $25. This was like 2010, so it was still kind of an okay computer to use. But, then all that sort of rapidly faded out throughout the course of the 2010s. But now, of course, late classic Mac OS and OS 10, there's this whole new sort of scene where people are developing things to use on it, and that also goes for Windows machines. I just don't have as much inherent interest in them personally. Especially with a lot of very helpful tools from very nice developers out there. FrogFind is the number one example that I go to because it's really handy, because I try to connect as many of these machines as I can to the internet, just out of curiosity. Having connected my own Macintosh SE up to the internet and getting it configured, something like FrogFind specifically targeted to that is absolutely perfect and a lot of fun. Anyways, I'm rambling on about this, but yeah, just the expansion of the scene to be more in-depth and inclusive. That's less of a thing that's just more of a general passage of time thing. But the way that the scene has changed over the past 10 years has been amazing and has been great for keeping my attention, just because of, these were machines that have not been officially supported for 20, 30 years are getting new things done, new pieces of software and hobbyist hardware. And I look at that and I go, that's a cool new thing I can do with this computer, which feels like the same sort of reaction somebody would have had to a new piece of hardware at the time. And I think there's a lot of the charm there that you don't get with modern computing, but you can still find it in sort of these little hobbyist circles. What interests me in retro computers, I already answered this one, thankfully. A lot of the simplicity of it, the visual design. I'm way into 1990s and early 2000s visual design, like the iMac, which was sort of the G3 iMac, which was sort of a peak. I have the poster that came with the 6 color iMacs directly across from me right now, and I'm currently looking at it and not looking at my camera for some reason. It's the autism, I know why, but there's a lot of the excuse me, the simplicity and the aesthetic are things that are things that interest me about it, and also again the capabilities of these things. Just what you can do with them is interesting, because my interest has always been pushing the machines that I have to their limits, which does put me apart from a lot of the community, I recognize, but I like to find something that each machine is very good at, and a specific use I can use it for, and I will use it for that. I will put it into service as that, because, there's still a lot of machines that are completely useless for day-to-day computing are still very useful for some smaller specific tasks. A lot of times related to listening to music, which I do fairly often, I will admit. A lot of times it just comes down to sort of the same few things. But I enjoy pushing the limits and seeing what these things are capable of, and it's cool. I think that's kind of the main thing. The main thing that keeps me interested in this, apart from the aesthetic, which is like 50% of it, as somebody who is very who gets very visually engaged with these things. As for how the tech community has treated me as a woman, I mean, I grew up in the tech community. I came out as trans in the tech community when I was 14, 15. So that was, heck, even that was a few years before sort of mass awareness and acceptance of these things. That was like 2014. I can't remember anymore. So, I've gotten a good amount of negative comments over the years. Nothing that's been overly major, because you just kind of got to brush it off, and you have always had to deal with that. I will admit, I am sort of the opposite of Amber in the case of voice training, because I have no interest in doing it. I have a lot of other things to do that are frankly a better use of my time. So I do get, no offense, don't get me wrong. But it's not something that I'm personally interested in. And yeah, as a result, it tends to attract a fair amount of negative attention from the sort of people who are, I don't want to say it's a magnet of negative attention, but I'm not quite sure of a better way to phrase it. It's an easy way for people to latch onto, which I just shouldn't. Ideally, I wouldn't have that to give them, but ideally they wouldn't they wouldn't want to cling on to something like that in the first place, because they would find something else anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Those darn Klingons. Sorry, I have to throw in a star.
No, that's okay. That was good. That was. So yeah, I've gotten the sort of the way that hatred, anti-trans and anti-women on the internet has developed over the years is that none of it's really changed, and it all sort of sounds like white noise to me after a while, because it's been the same stuff for a decade or more. So it never changes, and it's just something that you have to get used to, and that's unfortunate. That's sad. That shouldn't have to be the case. But yeah, I think that's the best summary of my experience there. As for my day job, that's a much different story, because I work in politics. I work in political organizing. It's certainly a much different experience, because people want to be as accommodating as they can. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they make missteps on that, which is always interesting. But that's always been relatively pleasant, except for points where it hasn't been. But it's been mostly relatively pleasant. I would rather deal with the experience I had at work than the experience I've had in the tech community. And I mean, I love both. I love both my day job and the retro tech community. So there's bad elements to both there's bad elements to both of those, but at the end of the day, there's been a lot of very good and very pleasant people who have always popped up, who've always been there to as willing to sort of push back and fight against it, and I am eternally grateful for that. And I think that's probably the best way I can phrase that. And I think that's all that I had to say. So I think I'll pass it to Amy if that's the order we're going in.
Just one sec. I want to touch on something that you had mentioned, because you said,
Yeah.
not much has changed in 10 years or so. If you actually go back to The Birdcage, which was released in 1996, and you watch the scene where Gene Hackman is watching at his house, he's watching the TV, and he's watching a show that he was on, and they're discussing gays in the military. And I'm like, isn't that still a hot topic in U.S. politics in 2023? Like, this is still a big to do. So, things haven't much changed in almost 30 years.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge factor. I've always, that's just how it's always rung in the back of my head that I have not heard a unique insult in probably 3 or 4 years at this point. So it becomes a little, it all sort of blends together at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just wanted to mention, because there was something, go to jcm-1.com. I just have to throw that up because he throws it up every episode. So if you saw me turning around, I was not paying attention to you. I was still listening. I'm just like, I need to find a marker so I can do. Go to jcm-1.com for all your retro, especially Apple III needs.
He has you so well trained.
I know, right? If you need Apple III stuff, Joe is the person working hard and diligently on that in the back end. If you want to watch a great episode, he actually talked about all his projects on this channel. a few episodes ago. All right, I will stop rambling. Amy, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. Start off. How did I get to the geeky side? I was born this way. I mean, my father was a mechanical engineer, and I was taking apart stuff and building stuff as a small child. I mean, doing rockets and building electronics and all kinds of stuff, modeling, etc. You know, I did it all. My bedroom was basically filled with parts of all the things that I took apart, you know, whether it was something electronic or mechanical. Um, to talk a little bit about my computing exposure when I got into it, the first video game that I ran into, it was something, this would have been in the mid 70s, and there was a game hall in my small little town I went to, and I'm talking pinball, foosball, air hockey, and things like that. And they brought this new game in. It's this little table that sat in the back, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And it's called Pong. So the advent of Pong was something that really made an impact on me. First time I had a chance to use a computer was in college, and they had one of these massive IBM 360s, took up an entire floor of the student services building. And you would go to little key punch machines and punch into these little computer cards, and you take them up to the window and hand them up, and they run your program and you get a report back. And so that's where I first got to play with a computer. And then my first computer that I owned, this would have been in the early 80s, was a Texas Instruments TI-99. And that was the coolest little computer. I mean, it's just amazing what I could do. I was writing programs like crazy on. You got one back there? I thought I saw one earlier. So anyway, that was a whole lot of fun. And so in school, I learned to do some programming for Fortran, COBOL, and on the Wang, I did some basic 2C programming and things like that. So that's my background in early computing. But what keeps me interested in tech, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. I'm not going to talk about retro computing. I'm going to talk about my current passion, which is Eurorack. Okay, I'd always been interested in electronic music. In the late 70s, all the synthesizers out there were analog synthesizers. And that's what you could buy off the shelf, the Moogs, the ARP Odyssey, etc. And at the end of the 70s and the early 80s, digital synthesis was something brand new. And in school, I studied digital synthesis on the computer. So we had this program, it was called Music 360, and you could program down to the level of the waveform, design your own waveform, and create this music. And you, of course, it was again on that big ass IBM machine that we would use on the key punch cards, take it into the window, wait overnight, and they give you back a digital tape, one of those big reels like you see in the old sci-fi movies. And the digital tape we would take over to the electronic music lab, and they had a DAC in the music lab that was, I mean, this huge device that you would run this tape on, and it would convert it to an analog signal that they could play and listen to. So I was initially getting involved in that, and I really did enjoy that. I thought that was amazing what you could do with the computer and creating music. Well, time goes by and dilates and whatnot, and kind of got out of the music scene. But over the past few years, I've gotten back into my music. I am a very lousy musician, but I enjoy music. I enjoy making it, and I enjoy the technical side of music. So I've gone back to the analog scene with the Eurorack, because that's analog signal processing to produce the music that I'm interested in making. So kind of parallels the discussion here of retro computing. I like working with the analog synthesis that I can follow the signal and how it's working and how I can modulate it and create new sounds and work with. So that's my story and what keeps me interested in tech. All right, I want to talk. The next couple of questions are about the treatment of women in tech. I want to talk about my day job. I work in the aerospace industry. I work at Kennedy Space Center. That aerospace has been a male-dominated industry for years and years. Yes, right, Anne. You got my rocket there. Anyway, it's been a male-dominated industry. You remember the Flyboys in the 60s, you know, all the astronauts were gung-ho test pilots and all that kind of stuff. And I came into working in the aerospace industry a couple of years ago, and the industry was picking back up after the shuttle program had shut down in 2011. Shuttle program shut down, they laid off probably 50% of the workforce. And then they started building back up to the Artemis program. So right now we're hugely busy. And we have a lot of folks that are left over from the shuttle period, guys that have been there for 30, 40 years. And, you know, I hear back in the shuttle days all the time. It drives me batty, okay? But there is a shift, there's a sea change in NASA of what they're doing as far as the kinds of people that they're attracting into the program. For example, Artemis 1, when it launched, the launch director is a woman, Charlie Blackwell Thompson. She's an amazing woman who leads the whole team. And in the firing room that was controlling the launch, the controllers were, at least 30% of them were women, which was an amazing increase of women in aerospace, in the space business. I supported that launch in a control room, a different control room than the firing room. I'm not good enough to be in the firing room, but I was in a control room. And in that control room, we were staffing 3 different positions, monitoring all the utility systems at the base. We were monitoring all the water systems, all the HVAC, all the power systems. And there was an engineer at each one of these consoles, and we were all women at these consoles. So that was pretty amazing, the amount of women that are supporting this mission. Yes, I've run into a certain amount of mansplaining going on there. You know, these old codgers that have been around forever and ever, they know how to do things, and, you know, the women don't. But for the most part, I can say working at NASA has been a wonderful experience of how the leadership has really fostered a culture of diversity and inclusion all across the board between gender, sexual identity, sexual preferences, gender identity, everything. And it's wonderful working there now. So, I mean, yeah, there are little pockets, there's leftovers of bias, there's leftover of bigotry, but those are going away. The future of space is for everybody. That's it. That's all I got.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that it's starting to change.
I have the chat will be happy to know.
Oh, there you go,
I
Ryan.
have the ambrosia.
All right, Anne.
Well, as I'm just in the next room from Amy, not just the next box, it turns out our stories have parallels to them. We kind of diverged at some point, but then we kind of found each other, and it's kind of cool. I started being geeky when I was a kid. There used to be these hot plates that you plugged in. They had one big kind of center conductor, and maybe the other part was embedded or something. But I was curious. I stole it from the kitchen, and I plugged it in my bedroom, and I touched it to my tongue, and I got shocked. And it's like an electrical engineer might have been born just that day. I don't have certain taste for certain foods, I'll blame it on that. But I remained curious and geeky, and I discovered Radio Shack and electronics. I took an electronics class in high school for 3 years, got very, very geeky. And I pretty much knew that I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I mean, it's really cool to put all this stuff together, and it paid decently, so it's like, what's not to like? But also that senior year in high school, I took a class in computing, and we did just like Amy. We punched cards. They were taken to the local university and run overnight. And so I learned Fortran and COBOL, and I picked up some basic. I started going to the university too, and finding students' passwords and logging into their HP 3000 and taking like the Trash 80 basic books and some of the other basic books and transcribing the basic into HP basic and playing games there. And I probably wasn't the most liked person to the university, but hey, I learned a lot. I even got a little gig, my first paying programming gig after I graduated high school. I coded a attendance program for a school on a Heath 89 in CPM and basic. So, I made like $500, and it's like, to me, that's a lot. So I applied to engineering schools, and my test scores weren't like the highest of the high. But I was aiming high too, MIT and Caltech and stuff. So I thought I might have to go to the local university, and then this little liberal arts college in Washington State said, we're very interested in you. And it's like, well, okay, you're not an engineering school, but they said like, well, you can go 3 years here, and we have a program you can transfer to Caltech for 2 years, and then we'll both give you a degree after 5 years. So it's like,
Oh, nice.
okay, yeah, sure, why not? I did that, and I got through the program, and so I was an electrical engineer, and I got out of school. I interviewed with Apple early on, and IBM Research in San Jose, and Microsoft, and it was a recession, so not a lot of people were hiring. So I ended up going to Boeing Aerospace, which was kind of a waste of my talents. It just wasn't interesting. But we got to do things like Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program, which basically was the movie War Games, but for real. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah, Amy likes that, or Taylor? I'm trying to remember. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, the MC, exactly. Bravo. Yeah, War Games. War Games is a great movie, just wonderful. Ali Sheedy. Oh my gosh, love her to death. But somebody brought in a newspaper clipping that said, "See the world and not have to ever shoot anybody." And I was like, oh. Yeah, okay, no military. It was the other folks, it was the people who, the Department of State, and they kind of promote peace around the world. So I joined them and got to do electrical engineering and diplomacy and stuff, and it was really cool. And I got to do that for about 30 years. But it was about 2013, about 5 years before I retired, and I'd always been a computer, IBM PC kind of gal, and I souped up computers and did things. I like making computers do very fast things, or good things they're good at too. But I was a programmer. I like C, and I like making things that interact with things. And I started getting into microcontrollers. And I know some of the people that are listening to this kind of get into some of that stuff too. And I got the attention of a company called Adafruit, and I started doing some tutorials for them. And they pointed me to Make, and I started writing a book or two for them. Adafruit came out with this really nifty all-in-one learning board that is found in some of the schools. The teachers might recognize them. And I got to write a book that describes how to use it. So that was fun. And so my career was winding up, and Adafruit said, "Do you want a job?" And I said, "Sure." You know, I get to do what I kind of always wanted to geek out. My hobby became my job. And so I write a lot of stuff for them. Having gone to liberal arts school and being a diplomat, you learn how to write well, even if you tend to be an engineer and geeky and not such a good writer. But I've kind of been forged into knowing that. So I write a lot for them, but I also do a lot of projects. Lately, I've been doing fun PCBs, computer circuit boards. So I did these earrings and this necklace that are floppy disks and made out of circuit boards. And you can go to adafruit.com, learn.adafruit.com, and you can get the files for these and send them off. And it's only a few dollars. And you can get your own floppy disk jewelry, or you can make anything you want out of the board. So yeah. Learn.adafruit.com. Look for circuit boards. But I've been doing some other ones, like this NASA logo in honor of Amy in the other room. And it has a circuit on the back and it lights up. So probably, yeah, you can see the little stars light up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making another one based on Star Trek. This is in design, but it's an LCARS panel made out of circuit board, and it'll be capacitive touch. And so you can hook it up to something and it should actually, work. And it's inexpensive. It's not, some prop or something. It's, but it's circuit board, so it's not too expensive,
I need that clip of Fry saying, "Shut up and shut up and take my money."
Well, I don't have an Etsy store or anything. I just I make things and I write about them for Adafruit and put it up, and it's all open source and free. That's one thing I really like. I kind of got into it. It's just all of the stuff that I produce like that is open source and documented and stuff, so anybody can do it. But I've still, played with the IBMs. I mean, I've got some PS2s back here because I started on them after working my way from IBM PC to PCXT to AT and IBM Portable and a couple of compacts. I started off my first computer that I bought. Well, okay, I take it back. That was a Tandy Color computer, and I was so frustrated. That thing, putting programs on tape was just horrible. So the first real computer I got was a compact Desk Pro. And this wasn't before, 386 and 4. This was the original 8086 running at 7.14 megahertz. And I pimped that out over the years to, hard disk and 720K floppy. And I still do some of that with these in that, I don't know, some people call it resto modding. You get one of these and you get it working and you make it halfway decent, but then you kind of look at all the parts available and it's like, well, how can I soup this up? So I try to find ways, a lot of people make add-on boards. There's some micro-channel architecture boards that allow you to use IDE drives, and then you go from IDE to SD. And so you can use SD cards. I love using SD cards instead of Trina called it spinning rust. Yeah. In college, when I was at Whitman before Tech, I worked at HP disk memory division building disk drives the size of dishwashers, and they called the one I worked on the BFD, the big effing disk, because it held a whole 404 megabytes in 7 platters, I think, 14 sides.
Jeez.
I mean, that was their big thing. So I've been around. Just tech is interesting. I mean, I get to still play with microcontrollers. Here's one that has HDMI output. This uses the new Raspberry Pi microcontroller, not their computer, and it has a lot of interesting capabilities. This one uses the same chip, but uses its processing to be a USB host, which is very difficult. I mean, again, you don't see a lot of old computers with USB host ports because USB is a pretty complicated protocol, but you can program this to go do all the USB host stuff, and it can spit out serial, which all the old computers love. I mean, serial data. So I can start thinking about how to interface all kinds of cool stuff, modern stuff, with the old stuff, which I like. I mean, I want to make it relevant. I want to have people interested in it. My original joystick is this old IBM compatible flight stick. Well, Adafruit's just coming out with a DB15 connector to output to a protocol called I2C, which is common in these microcontrollers. There's a little port right there where my nail is. And I'm trying to convince people like this guy who makes the PicoMem card that takes a Raspberry Pi and puts it into a PC and gives it all kind of memory and stuff to kind of support having the joystick port too, because it is trivial to do that once you have his technology and then Adafruit's technologies, merge them together. So that I'm interested, I keep interested, that's my thing. I play around myself when I have time, or I, tinker around. Amy has pictures of me, hunched over a PC, kind of doing my thing in the maker space that she has generously given me in our home. Now, I kind of made the name for myself when I wasn't a woman. I transitioned 5 years ago. And the transition went fairly well as far as the maker community. I switched LinkedIn profiles. I created a whole new profile and invited people to go over to my new LinkedIn profile. And I'd found that a lot of folks didn't come over and follow my new one. And it was kind of not so heartening. But the tech community and especially Twitter and everybody, and who follow me from Adafruit and blogging and stuff, have been very, very kind and generous and haven't skipped a beat. I rarely get negative comments. I have gone to Home Depot and been treated like, oh, there you go, good girl. You really just want this? No, dude, I am looking for this. I don't want that. I want this. But in tech, it's okay. When I was finishing up Caltech, the ratio of women to men was 6-1. So a lot of the women there in the mid 80s were kind of swarmed by the men. They were hormone laden males, and it turned out a lot of the women who were smart and made it to that university weren't really into men or wanted to finish their studies, and I had a lot of respect for them. I was already committed in a committed relationship, so I did not do that. But I've always felt for people, and I've always championed women's causes. And getting to the last question, Adafruit and a lot of the makers/electronics community I have found to be very inclusive. I mean, you have pockets of people who say, I know better than you in general, or that, I've been doing this a long time and you haven't, and there's a disconnect. I haven't seen a lot of that at Adafruit. It's a very welcoming company, very diverse. They didn't skip a beat when I said, "Hey, I'd like things to be a little different going forward." And they said, "Sure, no problem. Change anything you need." Change my name and every single online thing. Fortunately, the first edition of this book, my first book, couldn't change the name. When they did the second printing of this book, they did ask if I wanted my name changed. I said, please, yes, that would be great. Now I have a book that's actually in my name rather than in this other name, which it's okay though, because that book is rather out of date and no one would use it. But this learning board is still rather popular. So it's good that I have it. And no, I'm not going to write another book in the near future because it's like minimum wage. I mean, it just doesn't, Stephen King may be able to make a big profit, and the tech writers, they find that it's very niche, and no one's getting rich out of it, definitely. But Amy and I tend to be people who promote women in tech. I mean, in our respective fields, we try to be role models. If we can, and if not, we just try to do the best work we can, show that women can do great things, and there's all kinds of examples. I mean, I just saw one on Twitter scrolling by, in Amy's field, Sally Ride. I mean, what a wonderful woman, and a lot of NASA folk have been NASA women have done wonderful things. There's a woman going on the next moon mission, and I got to meet her when I watched Artemis 1 launch, and she was just talking in general. Christina Koch. Oh, there you go. I love it. Love it. Hey, we can promote the inventor of the ARM chip, that we have them all in the devices we're using now. That was invented by a woman who just happens to be trans. I mean, it's that life as we know it exists because innovators, women innovators, LGBTQ innovators have done great things. And people here, I mean, I've been wanting to buy one of Evie's kits. I said I would, and then money wasn't quite right, but I still want one. So, and you all blogging and posting and stuff, thank you very much for being there. Yes, I will. You have one? Okay, we can talk. Cut me a deal, friends and family discount. Anyway, I've been talking too much, and thank you all for having me here.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for coming. And finally, our last guest, who stuck down the corner. I'm sorry. Should have joined earlier.
Right, no worries. 2:30, so I'm a little bit tired, but yeah, good morning, everyone. What got me into tech? I mean, I think it was gaming first. When on my fourth Christmas, my sister got the NES, and I was absolutely hooked from the start. We had the little robot second player thing. We didn't know how that worked. Then we swapped that for the light gun, the zapper, which I then stuck chocolate in the end of because I just thought it would fire out the end for some reason. I remember leaving Mario 3 on overnight because we got to the second world. You couldn't save. It's like you just really so excited to get up the next day. Just pray my parents wouldn't come in and say the red light was on, wasting electric. We didn't have a computer in my house till I was about 13. No one in my family at all was techie. We didn't know anyone who was techie. But I knew I wanted to. I knew when I saw the PCs, like, this looks amazing. I need one of these in my life. So, after hassling for a while, yeah, we finally got one. I think later on, I used to just dismantle everything in the house as well. I'd take the toaster apart or the TV. I'd be getting in trouble for it sometimes, but I think they were well used to me by then. My first sort of real intro to the tech was when I was in science class. At the back, they had some old Compaq 486s and an old Commodore PET, and they were just there, like, just abandoned at the back of the desk. The teacher's like, "So what are you doing with these?" Like, "Oh, you can take them." I was like, "Oh, right, cool." So, bit of a shock to my dad when he pulled up in the afternoon, and I just loaded the car with like 4 Compaq PCs and a big PET. But yeah, I spent a lot of time, sort of pre having the internet, hassling guys at like what you call a flea market who would sell parts and things like, "Oh, how do I get Windows onto this?" Or, "Can you get me a hard drive?" Or what memory do I need? So I got a couple of them working, broke a couple, but yeah, it was really fun. Just something I've been into ever since, I think. I've gone through phases. I've had garages full of equipment. I just keep collecting, then go, I need to clear out, start again. I've currently got a garage full of equipment again. I really enjoy it. I always have plans, things I want to do. What keeps me in tech is there's just so much I still want to do. I think past Windows XP, I don't really have any interest. I think the nostalgia is a lot of reasons why I'm into it. But yeah, there's still a lot I want to do. I mean, 8-bit coding, I just really need to get better at it. The things I see people doing, and I think, God, the Arduino chips and the Raspberry Pis and stuff, I've barely even touched on it. And I think, yeah, no, right, the Adafruits as well. It's just something that there's so many options and so many things to do. So yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to be back in the community as well. I've always found the community to be, well, I don't know. I suppose maybe you follow who you want to follow, and those sort of people follow you back. But my community is a lot of people like me. I mean, mostly for people like us, I think it's about the tech anyway. And everyone, you come across hate every now and then, and I kind of see it as someone who's not really found the thing they want to do in their life. That I feel sorry for them a lot of the time. The sad people who want to put hate out into the world. Well, that's up to them. But in my community generally, it's everyone's very accepting. You have to be accepting of other people, and it's a nice life to try and live that way, I think. It's different in work. I work in a sort of construction background, and I mean, it's better than it used to be. There used to be a lot of misogyny. You used to drive around in a van and you'd be slowing down. Everyone would have to start like beeping the horn at women going past and all this. I mean, it was terrible, really. But even now, yeah, these people aren't like me, and that's fine. And they can have their opinions, but I'm the boss, so they better shut up. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem. No problem. So I'll just quickly, because yeah, I'm looking at the time as well. I'll quickly go through mine. I was always a kid that so I grew up in the 80s, back before cell phones. And thank God for that, because if people knew what I did as a kid, I would have probably been in child protective services um a long time ago. My grandmother lived in the country, and when we would go visit her, my favorite thing to do, Saturday morning, I'd go up and we'd wake up, and I'd go, "Let's go to the dump." and the dump was a single pit place in the back of the backwoods, and they would set it on fire every night. So this was obviously before the days of environmentalists. Like you would hear aerosol cans going pop. It was, yeah. Anyway, but they had a section where people would throw electronics, and early on, give me a screwdriver and I'll figure out how to take this thing apart. I have no idea what the parts are, but I was fascinated to take it apart, kind of see what made it work. And then I didn't care. Like it got thrown back to the dump, probably by my grandmother after we left. So that's kind of where I got into it. My first computer, grade 7, we were one of kind of the poorer schools. All the other schools had gotten these brand new Apple computers and were throwing out their Commodore 64s. And we had a teacher went around to all the schools and collected all these Commodore 64s. And he created a lab in our school of all these. And that was my first experience. And I remember spending lunch hours just playing games on the Commodore 64. It was amazing. And then we got our first home computer when I was about 13, 14 with Windows 3.1. And I remember begging mom, we have to get both size floppy drives because floppies were the way of the future. And I still have my Star Trek Kobayashi alternative game, text-based game, on the 5 1/4 floppy drive or floppy disk. I don't have a computer that has a floppy drive in it anymore, but I still have the disk and storage. Yeah, and then I went to school and I started taking 3D game animation and realized after a year, no, I can't draw for the life of me. Um, and one of our classes was 2D animation, so you had to classically draw things. Um, and then I took a programming course because I'm thinking, okay, well, I like computers. I'll take programming, flew through programming, and then couldn't find a job afterwards because this was January and there's not many companies hiring right after Christmas. Um, so a friend of mine owned a computer store and he said, hey, desktop computer repair? Because I've been working with desktops and stuff at this point. And I said, yeah. He said, because his company is called A1 Laptop. But despite the fact having the word laptop in the name, he kept getting inundated with all these desktops to repair. And he said, come on board. And that's how I started really getting into computer repair, was just doing it. And I've been loving it ever since. And that's what keeps me in it. I don't like at work. It's a lot of install Windows and sit there and watch it. Which gets boring, which is why I'm happy when my boss comes and goes, here's a ticket, go pick up a computer. Well, yeah, because I get to at least take apart a computer for 5 seconds and take the drive out. So yay. And I just pray that the drive actually dies so it gives me something more to do when we're trying to clone them. Don't tell my boss that. I don't pray that drives die. That would be wrong. Or to quote Faith from an episode of Buffy, that would be naughty. Yes, I have way too much random information in my head. But yeah, I've always enjoyed actually working physically on computers, and it goes back to my days of rummaging around in the dump for old record players or whatever that were, thrown out that obviously didn't work, and I take them apart. So that's what keeps me interested. I'm kind of getting more into the retro side of things. I got a Quadra 650. Garth, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat because Garth gave it to me. I've used it once. I really got to get back into it. So like some of the stuff is what I like to call above my pay grade, which is partly the reason I opened up my YouTube channel, because then I started getting into it and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Let's do a YouTube stream and invite people on that have the experience, and they can kind of help me guide me through as I was doing it. So it's been a lot of learn trial by fire. So, but I'm always interested in computers. Interesting that Maya had mentioned that they're 24. I work with a coworker who's 25, and recently we had a ticket come in for one of our builds, and the user sounded like this really they wanted a high-end computer, and they also sounded like a high-end computer themselves from all the, I want this and this and this. And I'm like, no. I said, I should just give her a DOS computer with a fax machine and say this is her new email address. Enjoy it. And like I was just going on this huge rant about this person as I'm building the computer. And there's a girl that works with me who's 25, and she turned to me and she said, "What's DOS?" And I kind of went, um. So I literally took my big book, and I mean it's like a thick, very thick book of DOS, and went, "Here, read this." The next day, because yeah, she said, "What's DOS?" And I just went, "Oh, oh dear."
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah, yeah. Just had a good laugh.
Yes, I just
Oh,
twing. I just pain there when you said that.
right? There was pain in me, because like Tim looks at me and goes, "You have to understand, she's 25." Like, because my boss Tim is roughly the same age I am, and like he's like, "We know this old stuff more than." There you go, Microsoft MS 4.01, very nice. So that's what keeps me interested. I honestly haven't found any issues in the tech community, at least the ones that I'm part of. They're very accepting. Yay. Um, Interesting side story. So back in 20, oh God, it gets further and further back the more I go. Was it 2011 or 2010? I think it was 2011. I want to say I was doing tech support for Logitech. So thank you for calling Logitech. My name's Trina. How may I help you today? Great. See, I can still go through this field today. And it's been years since I've worked with them because they moved to Mexico. But I had gone on a camping trip for trans people. And at that point, I wasn't out full time. And so it was the first weekend that people were calling me Trina all weekend. And then Monday, we were slow. So Monday, I got back, and our boss had said, if you need to if you want to take time off, just call me and I'll give you the day off, because we were slow, so a lot of us were just sitting around. So I called Monday and I said, "Hey, can I get today off?" And he's like, "Done," because then it wouldn't go against our attendance if we called in. And then Tuesday and Wednesday were my normal days off. Tuesday, I met with two of the girls from the camping trip. So again, I was called Trina, all like afternoon/evening. And it was interesting when I got dropped off by one of them. She said, "When are you coming out?" And I said, "Oh, you know, it's down the road, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "You should just do it." So Thursday, I go into work and it's slow. And I'm sitting there now. My old name is above the computer monitor. And I answer the call. "Thank you for calling Logitech customer care. My name is," and I couldn't think of my name. And that's what made me come out at work. 3 weeks later, I came out at work. Really funny side story. So I had taken a call with my dead name and my old voice about a week before I came out, because I had to go through procedures with Logitech because we were a third party company. So it took about 3 weeks for that all to get processed through. Um, and So about a week before everything was processed through, I take a call from this woman. Turns out she needs a new receiver. Her receiver's gone belly up. I said, "Okay, do you have another keyboard and mouse to use in the meantime?" "Yes, I do." "Great, I'll send it to you regular shipping." A week goes by, a little over a week goes by. Now we only take 40% of the calls, so our chance of getting a call back is none, because the Philippines were taking 60% of the calls. And I get a call back, and it's, "Hi, my name is Mrs. Smith." And I like panic, and I'm like, "Hey, Mrs. Smith." So we start talking, and she's like, "Trina, you sound like a really nice girl, but I was talking to," insert dead name here. "Can I talk to him again?" And I'm sitting there going, "What the hell? What do I do?" So I just said, "Oh, I'm sorry. He transitioned to another department." And my boss behind me heard me say that and nearly fell off his chair laughing at me. So he slips me a note afterward, like as I'm on the call with her. And he says, "Go into after call. We need to talk." And I'm like, "Okay." So he asked me what the whole thing was, and I said, yeah. I said I had to come up with something. So that was my answer. And she said, you were just as nice as me. And I'm like, oh, thanks so much. I said, we do try. And that was the last I heard from her. But yeah. So, but they were at my work, they were super supportive. In fact, when the day that it was official, the HR person sent out a message to all the managers saying, this person is now known as Trina, right? She, her pronouns, da da da. And they all came up to me and said, welcome to the team. I was like a new hire without having to go through all the training again. So
It's tempting from a meme perspective to be like, oh yeah, let me just put you on hold here real quick, and then
right,
hi,
yeah.
this is
yeah. Drop the voice down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah.
just
Except that
like
it feels real
and
bad to
I'm
do
evil
at the
enough that I
time.
would just I would just this is why I should never work in customer service. I would just mess
Yeah,
with that person so hard.
I panicked. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna drop my voice down again. No, because I had spent 3 weeks doing in the shower because they said use warm water. So I would like gargle in the shower, and I would go through the one opening I had every day. Thank you for calling Logitech customer care. My name is. Thank you, and I did that over and over again, and that's how it was the best.
That's the reason I trained my voice. I worked in a call center as well when I
Yeah.
transitioned. So yeah, I had to. I had super requirement, because most of the time the only thing anyone ever saw of me was the end of their phone. They just heard me through my voice. So
Yeah. And it was funny. I had moved over to sales for a bit because they got backlogged, and I had this guy call in, and he was looking for a mouse, and it wasn't made anymore. So I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's no longer made, and unfortunately, you're well out of warranty for me to send you a new one." And he said, "Oh, well, what would you recommend?" And I said, "I recommend blah 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 at the time." And he said, "Well, and he's really southern. He said, you probably don't understand this, but I'm a guy with really big hands." And I'm like, hi. I kind of get this. So I again on the fly went, yeah, I have one at home. My boyfriend absolutely loves it, and he has large hands. And the guy bought the mouse.
Yes.
That was the way
There
I
you
made
go.
the sale.
Boyfriend. Yeah,
Boom.
that's
There
the
you go.
Right? When you so, but yeah, I've had some fun over the time. And at work right now, out of the four of us that are building computers, there's only one guy on our team, and the one person I want to shoot at times is the one guy. But I'm just like
That's
30-year-old guy. That's all I'm gonna say. Deep breath.
zen. Zen.
Okay, so wow. We have questions, but we're also like 20 minutes over.
Let's go. Let's do the
Let's
question.
do
All right,
it.
all right,
Yeah.
all right. So we're doing this as
All I
like
can-
a speed round. All right,
Woohoo!
favorite OS. Go.
Snow leopard.
Windows 3.11 for work group.
XP.
What you do?
I don't know.
I have
All of them.
I have two. Mac OS 8.
Okay.
Really love it. And then also Windows 2000.
The first ME series of OS
I had
from
to.
that, or from Windows.
I'm gonna get hives thinking about Emmy.
I mean,
Hives.
I'm a generalist, so
I
I'm
did a little bit of
platform
help desk before I was
Wow.
a teacher. Emmy.
No.
Hives.
2000 was
2000, not
Windows
ME.
NT. Yeah, not ME.
No, 2000
Not a
was.
chance.
See, I had a hard time with 2000 too.
I loved 2000 so much.
Evie,
I'll
do
say
you have one?
I'll say Mac
Oh.
OS 9.
Go ahead.
I'll say Mac OS 9. Then somebody else said Mac OS 8, so I'm a little bit late to the train there. But I'll say OS 9 just because I like using it more than OS 8.
Fair enough.
It's got more colors.
For those who haven't answered, anybody want to chime in? Favorite OS?
The one that's running my computer right now.
Protoss. I guess Protoss is the second. I mean, if Snow Leopard is too modern, Protoss.
I know a friend of mine who runs his company on DR-DOS 7.03.
Dr.
Wow.
And I was his IT person all the way up to when I moved to Toronto 8 years ago.
I'm surprised nobody here is stumping for GSOS.
I should, but my GS spends so much time as an Apple II, as an 8-bit on steroids, because that's mostly what I stream, and and even when I do load games, I load them directly from disk. I use the GS all the time, but I never use GSOS.
So I'm gonna break it down. Favorite Mac OS is Snow Leopard.
Yes.
Just the best one out there.
Yes,
favorite
yes,
Windows
yes.
favorite Windows version is XP. Any day of the week.
Mhm.
It has to be XP. And favorite Linux would be, I always loved Linux Mint. That was always I fully enjoyed Mint. And then favorite DOS, haha, it would be DR-DOS 7.03 because up to 8 years ago, I was still supporting it and trying to get things to work with it. So, yeah.
I will say, Trina, go back a minute with regards to your coworker. What is DOS is also a reasonable question to me because I'm the Macintosh person. Somebody else probably made this joke in the chat, so I apologize for stealing it.
Go online, find a cheap 386, 486 Pentium 2, 3 with a AGP port for your video card because they're easier to find the graphics or drivers for, and install DOS. Go with the DOS.
One of those piles of floppy disks on the desk behind me is MS-DOS 6.22, and then another one of those piles is Windows for Workgroups 3.11.
And if you need, I have over 1,000 batch files that my friend had written. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
It is.
I will say I have a PCXT in the closet that I got out of a barn, so my experience with DOS is painful because I'm working on nothing but 360K floppy disks and no hard drive. But
Oof. And Taylor and Amy, what are your favorite OSs?
Windows XP. I'm a Linux person on almost all of my machines except my recording stuff when I do music, and that's whatever the latest Mac is, and I never like it.
What's your favorite shell? Linux. G shell. Bash shell.
Whatever defaultly comes with, that's as much as I know about that.
Oh, as much as I have the most important question for Trina from chat.
Yeah.
Trina, I'm trying to connect my Logitech webcam to my Haiku ThinkPad. Can you help? So if you can get back to Sean on that, that'd be great.
Sean, yeah, just I'll tell you what, I'll call you after. We'll talk.
Okay. Sean, I got you back.
Her rate is $250 an hour.
Yeah.
Yes, I wish you consulting
a minute.
Right
yeah,
now?
not even an hour. A minute.
A minute.
But I've got nostalgia for the Windows 3.1 though. It's there.
And Evie.
Yeah, so my favorite operating system is Backbit. So you just turn it on, and you just use the cursor keys, and you choose a game, and you play it.
Love it. Great.
This is actually not a game; it's a demo.
All right. Next question. What is the most strange / weird computer anyone's ever used?
I didn't use it, but the 2016 somebody brought a Pravits to Kansas Fest, and I was like watching a bunch of people try to fix it. So that would be the weirdest thing I've been in proximity to.
I'm sorry, what was the computer?
A Pravits. It's a Bulgarian Apple II clone.
Okay.
It had actual literal Cold War era dust in it when we opened it. It was very cool. So that's my weird thing story.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna get my weird thing out of the way because it's real boring. But back when I had my 486 and I was doing my 486 stuff, like Windows 95 was the new big thing. So there was like trying to see what you could get it to run on, and I did the whole 486 on Windows 95 on a 386 thing, because a friend of mine had a 386, like an AMD 386 that ran at 40 megahertz, with a whopping 8 megabytes of RAM. So we threw Windows 95 on it, and it was a bad time.
Oh,
That
weirdest thing we
that doesn't
have
even scratch the surface of weird computers.
is a Kim 1 replica
Ooh.
that we built.
Ooh.
And
Paula,
boy, do we need a Backbit Pro adapter for this thing.
if only,
If only you knew somebody.
if only we knew someone.
I know, right? If
Kim
only you
one
weren't
is
on a podcast.
Right?
All the Kim 1 games
All
we need
those
to
Kim
play.
1 games we need to play.
So the weirdest computer I have is probably this one, the Othello Multivision.
Othello.
Never
Wow.
even heard of it.
It's actually it's basically an SG-1000, like the early Sega game machine, just with a really strange keyboard, meant for playing Othello and really nothing else.
Yeah, you can tell the keyboard is like designed for that computer because it's not even 3 rows of keys.
Yeah, it's A through H, 1 through 8, and well, actually no, 0 through 9, and A through H, and switch 1, switch 2. Oh, but it has a port on the side.
There's a weird amount of SG-1000 clones out there, and every now and again I just learn about a new one.
Well, it's
Yeah,
actually
like, okay,
a
cool.
license. It's a licensed SG-1000. But
Oh, okay.
This definitely qualifies. I mean, this is not as obscure, but it definitely qualifies for weird. Like, you guys know what
What
this
is it?
It's Atom.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know.
But it's just weird. The architecture, because it was like a video game expansion unit, and I guess APF did something similar. But it's like a video game expansion, but it's bigger than the original product. And it's a weird computer because it's just like you just look at it and you're like, okay, I see why that failed.
Is the Atom's the one with the power supply built into the printer, right?
This is actually only half of the computer because you're normally supposed to have the printer, but the printer, I either chucked it. I think I might have chucked it because it was all rusty. It was disgusting.
Well, Amy and I both used Wang mini computers back in the day. I'll let Amy say what she used one for. And when I first got to the State Department, Taylor and Amy are State Department invested heavily in these Wang word processors, and it was horrible coming from like the early IBMs to be dumped into that. At least I'd go home and use an IBM. But eventually they went to Wang PC clones and then finally went to PCs. But it took a while. Amy, what did you use Wangs for? Amber, Cat, this is a G-rated show
I
now.
work with
Oh,
teenagers.
no, it's not a G-rated show. You have to watch the other podcast.
I work with teenagers. Okay.
What did you do with the Wang computer, Amy?
I was using it. I was in fire protection. I was a fire sprinkler designer. I was doing hydraulic calculations on the Wang computer, and actually it was a Wang 2600. Is that what the model? But anyway, it was like a 16 user mini computer, and they were using it for accounting as well as we were doing hydraulic calculations, and so everybody had a terminal. But then a third party came out with a terminal emulator that you could load onto an IBM PC clone or a PC or a clone. So we bought K-Pro desktops and ran this emulating program to emulate being a terminal on the Wang computer. And then we took the K-Pros and we networked them together. So we had I want to say it was a token ring network that we had 2 or 3 of the K-Pros together. Yes.
If anybody wants IBM token ring adapter card, I'm only a 10 base T or higher person. I will not touch token ring.
So that was what we were using it for.
Cool. Anybody else with a weird, strange computer that hasn't?
Uh-oh.
Is that a Vectrix?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes,
god!
that's
I haven't seen
awesome.
one of those in years.
I repaired it myself too.
That's
Nice,
fantastic.
nice.
I've not got a strange computer, but I think the weirdest thing I've got on my desk right now is a CD printer.
Oh, that's super cool.
So you put it in, obviously there's just a little bit sort of 90s controls on it, It's quite retro looking.
So it prints on a CD, like you put a CD
Yeah,
in
it prints on the face of a CD.
That is
basically.
oh my gosh. I would have
It's got an old ribbon cartridge in.
I would have died I would have died to have one of those back in the
Yeah,
early 2000s when I was really burning a lot
Not
of
that we'd
stuff
be
on
doing anything
CD.
with copying, of course. So.
Oh yeah, no, never. Never.
It's for labeling all your backups,
that would
right?
be that would be wrong.
That would be
That would be
wrong.
wrong, and I completely disagree with anyone who ever did that.
I have this old MacBook thingy. It doesn't fit in with all the IBMs. It's like a 2012.
Well,
Oh my gosh! If it's a 2012 Mac Pro, or MacBook Pro, it's
Pro.
actually really you can still get quite a bit of functionality out of it. I know a lot of people who
I have
are
one
still
right
running
there.
those as daily drivers.
Yeah, XPS.
Mine has I wish I was still using mine, but I did something and it has there's a loose something somewhere in the video, and I'm not going in after it.
Well, the person who used to own this had
Everybody
taken it
gets out
to
there,
China.
mid-2012 MacBook Pros.
And if you take any sort of hardware to China, at least back then, it ends up with lots of extra software that you didn't actually load onto it. So,
I have to join I have to be a joiner. Although mine has my logo is cooler than yours.
oh yeah, sorry.
I have the decal and it still
So
has
the real
the
question.
still has the Magland stuff on it too from when I took it to MagFest.
The PowerBook G4. Woo!
Which
It's gonna
of
get
the
an
2012
SSD.
machines has USB 3? That's the real question.
No, I think
Right when we
I think the 2012 only had USB 2.
Yeah,
No,
it only has
the
it
2012
don't. Yeah, I think it only has USB 2.
Unless you had a
PowerBook 1400.
There you go.
2012 have USB3.
I have a Duo
They were the
dock.
first ones to.
I have a Duo dock, but I don't have the dock for
I
it.
got a PowerBook 180.
Well, the only reason I have the 1400 is to write discs because it has a CD drive and a floppy drive, so I can sneakernet discs, so I can write stuff for the Macintosh Plus that's sitting on top of the tower of laptops.
So I just want to make a
That's what I
note.
use
Yeah.
this Pismo for.
Ooh.
I would have loved to
nice.
got a Pismo, but that was way out of my price range when I was
Oh,
looking.
I saw your guys' video on
Is that
that. That is
screen
so
on
That
the
is
cool.
Specky.
It's so cool.
That's very cool.
And I
That's
had
the Spectrum laptop.
Yeah.
I already showed this one off, but
Very
I have my
affordable.
iBook clamped, and somewhere in this mess, I have the matching G4 or G3.
Nice.
I love the part of the video where everyone devolves into everyone just grabbing things and
Yes.
everyone's like, look
Yeah,
at this.
somewhere I have.
So what I was
I
just about
have
to
so
say.
much crap, and I can't get to it because my library is what's getting
It's my
the
current
wall
project.
tomorrow. So my entire library
Oh, nice.
is in a pile. I have massive stacks of books in here. I don't know where anything is.
So what I find really fascinating is that usually when it's Javier on the stream, he gets showing joysticks, which I always tease about that he likes to show his joystick on the screen.
Yes.
And we're just all showing off like, here's our laptops.
Here's my laptop. My laptop collection is what I can reach. Is the thing. Like it's
Right.
right here. It's like this is what I can. There's a G, and then somebody commented about the G4 under my desk, and right next to it there's an MDD G5, and that's my backup GS. I actually keep a couple of the GS and the Mac Plus. Spent the year in my classroom, and I did have a couple kids who asked me to play like Arkanoid or SimCity or stuff on it. So I do keep a couple of retros in my classroom and get the kids to let the kids like. If you get your work done, you can. They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "If you don't bring your Chromebook, this is what you have to use."
So how many of them just leave their Chromebooks?
None of these kids are one of the kids that end up messing with the kids in my study hall or my homeroom. My English kids are just like, I teach senior English. They don't care. They just want to be done. I love my kids. They're just like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm not serious. I'm gonna like. They know I'm not serious.
All right. So next question. Did anyone hear that the F256K project was designed by a woman?
I've seen it on Twitter. I mean, that sounds nice.
Yeah. I haven't. I don't. It was just something one bit fever dream. So
I have no idea what that.
Yeah, I don't know really what it is either.
Over the years.
It's one of the Commander X16 and stuff like that. It's one of the new and the Aegon. It's like a new old computer.
Yeah.
So like an 8-bit macro made out of new components. It sounds really cool. I don't know a whole lot about it.
The one thing that I find dissuading, or like that I haven't reason I bought one yet, the price tag's still a bit high on it.
Yeah, it's the problem is small batch and it's new components.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, who makes the Phoenix, she said a while back she was gonna send me one because she showed this picture on Twitter of like 2 of my SID chip replacements in her machine, and I was gonna do a firmware thing, and she said she was gonna send me a machine. Then she said she was busy because I don't know, who knows.
I have never heard of this before. What's it based around? What's the CPU based?
Oh, it's actually there's different versions. Like one version has a 6502, one version uses like a 68,000. I don't know. There's like different configurations. I haven't.
So the answer is like everything other than x86 that I could ever ask for. That's fair enough.
So far. And finally, last but not least question. Any female pioneers you look up to?
Well, I mentioned Sophie Wilson, who invented the ARM chip. I mean, she's way cool, and she's British, like, so it's cool. But Lynn Conway, also, she was at IBM. And they kicked her out after she transitioned, but she helped invent ways of doing parallel processing of microcode, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but she's been, again, one of those people who's, a tech pioneer and also a community pioneer.
Nice.
Aha. Yeah, Margaret Hamilton. Bravo.
Oh, that's so cute too.
So I wanna say Jerry Ellsworth. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of her, but I think I first saw her YouTube videos like way back in like the early 2010s, and she was just always kind of on the radar. And eventually, when I got into hardware, I'm like, oh, okay, my curiosity makes sense here.
Okay, so you're not allowed to steal my person. I was going to say, Evie. That's it. You're banned. Because that was the name I had in my head, and I'm like, I'll let everybody else go first.
Does it make me sound like too much of a dork to say Ada Lovelace? Because if it wasn't for her, none of us would be here.
Exactly.
Admiral Grace Hopper.
She invented the language I first learned to
Yes.
program in, or
Mhm.
second learned to program in.
And didn't she coined computer bug because there was like a moth in it that was literally
Yes,
the
Yes.
computer bug
Yeah.
that was making it not
the
run?
in
computer,
the
yeah.
vacuum tube.
There was an actual bug in the computer.
In the vacuum.
God.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't in the tube. That would burn up. It was in a relay. Hello.
I don't.
Don't be silly.
I am young.
It's tube adjacent.
It's stupid. I am a young. I am but a youngling who only remembers the integrated circuit.
Well,
Any-
I'm going to
anybody-
speak up on this one.
Sure.
Suddenly, I can't speak. Yes, someone I look up to is Wendy Carlos because she pioneered the so much of using electronic music, analog electronic music. And then my other idol is, she's not a tech pioneer, but she's just a totally badass person, was Amelia Earhart.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mine.
All the ones that I have in mind, most of the big ones that I have in mind have already been said. Sophie Wilson, Wendy Carlos, the two big ones. But I'm going to name drop three people from the early Apple scene that are relevant. Susan Kerr, that one's relatively well known. Joanna Hoffman, which is that's what we're on the more marketing side than anything technical, but still important. And Andrea Cunningham, which is same story, but these were all important people in the early days of Apple, which is where a lot of us focus, where I suspect a lot of us focus our time on tech. So
it was the women who could stand up to Steve Jobs and tell
Yes.
him, "No, you're being an idiot. Stop."
Yes, well, yeah, literally, particularly Joanna Hoffman.
Joanna Hoffman, yeah, she was the one. She's like, "No, Steve, you're being an idiot. Stop."
Yes.
And he would listen to her, kind of, sort of, almost.
And is there anyone on the UK side that we haven't mentioned?
No, I mean you've already sort of mentioned the UK ones that I know of. I think historically, like sort of already been covered. I think there's a few people on my Twitter that I respect. Misadventures with Max. She's brilliant. Really good content. Sharka Bites again. She's just puts a lot of effort into the videos. Really good with the retro game scene. And Game Mistress as well. I meet her at events on occasion. She's really putting it out there. It's just nice to see people who are doing well for themselves with the industry as well nowadays. So props
And
to-
I'm gonna give a shout out to one of our guests who couldn't make it tonight, which was Kate of the Macintosh Librarian, who is doing really great content. And unfortunately, we were not only supposed to have Kate, we were also supposed to have Mackie on with us tonight. 'Cause
Aw,
she was going to have Mackie in the background.
Maggie's so cute. I love
Right?
Maggie.
Speaking of Mackie,
Tiny Maggie.
ooh,
And I guess if we're gonna talk about badass YouTube women, I gotta shout out Quinn Dunkey, Blondie Hacks. The stuff she does with metal is just like, oh, can I be her when I grow up? I'd be Quinn when I grow up.
You can be anything you want.
all right. So we're going to wrap this up because we have gone a wee bit over time, and I know I'm keeping somebody awake, including myself.
It's doing a
So
host to,
Several
properly.
somebodies, but that's okay. That's what coffee.
myself included with that.
That's
Yeah.
what coffee is for.
Yeah, exactly. We have a Tim Hortons in the. Oh, for those who don't know, that's a coffee chain here in Canada.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah, we only got
Timmy's!
them recently, but they are good.
Timmy's.
Yeah, good old Timmy's.
I watch
Trina!
Loading Ready Run. I watch Loading Ready Run all the time. I know all the I know all the Canada stuff because I watch Lure so much.
I want to thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
It has been a real
This is
privilege
super
to be on
fun.
this.
You're
Yes.
more than welcome.
Thanks, Trina. It's been
Thank
a
you
blast.
for all for
you.
coming out.
No,
I'm going
what a
to.
crew. Let's take over the world.
Let's do this. I'm saying we should just do this every retro Maccast. Just brand it Trina's retro Maccast. Be done with it.
But thank you so much for
You're
organizing
more than
this
welcome.
because I've really enjoyed
Every
everybody's
person.
stories
This is
and
great.
meeting everyone here. Thanks for having us.
Hey, no problem. No problem. Yeah, and it's been a great collection. I just reached out to people, and then some people were also said, some people contacted me and said, "Why don't you contact this person and this person?" And I'm like, "Great."
Yeah, no,
And
I was
I had a
like,
few. I had a few extras, but unfortunately, one of them I was going to invite only could make it on the 4th. And I said, by that point, I was starting to get everybody coming back. Either the 4th or the 18th, or the 18th worked for them. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna.
But this is the perfect number of screens because we've got the full Brady Bunch.
yes.
Exactly. That's right.
I'm backward. I don't even know which way
Oh my, you can't see me.
All right, so let's quickly do some shameless. Yeah, it's getting at that time. Let's do some shameless self promotions. Where can we find you?
I just
Starting with
totally
Kat.
dropped my link in chat. If I don't know if it will actually
It's
make
not
it
going to
link.
work because YouTube is stupid.
YouTube is stupid, but
Yeah.
twitch.tv/Lady Ilaros is where I stream, and then all of my socials or some of my socials are listed there. I don't know if I've updated the thing yet, but really, Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern, come watch me fail at old video games. Go.
So you can see my products at backbit.io. That's a website. And I do YouTube videos very occasionally. I probably will do one soon on 12 video game systems that Backbit can do, because I did one on 12 computers that Backbit can do. I'm actually very open to ideas and collaborations, and the best way to reach me is probably email. And you can find my email. Go to my website, you'll find my email.
Okay,
Or just
Evie,
email evtron3000@gmail.com.
Evie, it sounds like you're going to tell me that your email is either Yahoo or Hotmail. Because usually when I get people telling me, it's usually, no offense,
Email.
it's usually old people.
I'm
like
not
in their 70s or 80s going, email me, because I don't use this,
No,
Facebook.
It's because in the early 2000s, I became like mentally a Googler. Like I just became hooked on Google products starting around 2000.
Okay.
But I never became a Googler because I'm kind of too much of a rebel.
I'm just pulling your leg. That's all.
But if you've ever played Thimbleweed Park, there's all these machines, such and such Tron 3000. So I'm evtron3000@gmail.
Awesome.
All right, Taylor and Amy.
So yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
done.
The Taylor and Amy
Yeah, like and subscribe, buy merch. That's all.
Oh, and speaking of merch from these two, get the sweatpants. I cannot say how comfy they are. And the problem is, like, I wear them to work until like they're covered in fur. They're black. I got the black ones, so they show up. But yes, I highly recommend the sweatpants if you're looking for a comfy.
I have to go buy them.
I do not have sweatpants.
I need to get them.
You both need to get them. Go ahead, Amber.
All right. You can find me on YouTube at TechAmber. It's Tech Ambrosia. Stream every Saturday at 4 in the afternoon Mountain Time, and videos semi-irregularly. I'm currently stuck in the middle of a huge GPU test, running through a whole bunch of $100 GPUs, seeing which ones are actually decent, which ones you should avoid. Spoiler: most of them you should avoid. But you can also find me on Mastodon at tech.lgbt/@Shira. Shira is my persona because, of course, I'm not only trans, I'm also a furry. And then I'm also on Twitter at TechAmber on the tweet machine. And those are the socials I have right now. I'm planning a launch of the Tech Ambrosia website this year, before the year gets out, and I've got 6 months left to do it, so hopefully it'll happen. We'll see.
I think you're up.
So it seems. So I have social media all over the place. My YouTube channel exists. It's just my name, which you can look it up. The easiest way to find me on anything, I have 2 different Twitter accounts. The easiest way to find me on anything is to check my website, which I essentially use as a link tree, which is just www.mayaking.org. It's a very simple website, and my personal links are at the bottom of it. That's about it. You can find me on my Twitter handle is on display here. It's just at MayaKingPA if you want to cut to the chase. But that's about it.
And Amy?
Well, I don't have any online shows or anything like that, so I'm just found at Twitter at Captain Amy. That's CAPTN Amy. And that's just my personal account, and you can reach out to me there.
Cool.
And I know that works because I became Twitter friends with Amy, and now we've been married since August, and it's wonderful. You can find me. My link tree is Ann_engineer, just like my Twitter handle. You can find me on the Adafruit.com social media things. I post a lot there. I'm on Discord and LinkedIn and GitHub, but it's all in the link tree. And then I've got an Amazon.com author profile for things like the book here and stuff. So check me out.
You're up, Sonic.
Hi, you can find me on Twitter at RetroCon. That's pretty much my only online presence. If you're in the UK, you can might catch me at a gaming market, RetroCon Games Stall. I'm also doing it's probably too late for anyone in the UK, but I'll be doing a retro console and PC event in August. So anyone who wants to come down, that'll be retro gaming for PC, sort of XP era. If you can sort of see that, there we go. Just about. There you go.
Thanks. And finally, you can find me here on the YouTube at Trina's Technobabble. You can also find me on Twitter at TechnobabbleT. And you can also check out my website, computerswithpride.ca. I do ship within North America. And I do have some cheap GPUs, Amber. Hint, hint. If you want to try them. But yeah, that's pretty much my online presence. And there is going to be somebody from the UK will be watching later on because it's well past their bedtime. So he messaged me privately, said, I'm going to bed. I'll watch your stream tomorrow. So I know at least one person from the UK will be watching this tomorrow. Yeah, so last but not least, because I can't, I have to thank Joe of Joe's Computer Museum. I don't know how to say your last name, Joe, whatever. Who also has GCM-1.com. Yes, it's cheap, but it works. Go buy your retro computer gizmos, especially Apple III. He's been doing a lot of work on the Apple III stuff. As I mentioned before, go to the website, buy all the stuff so he can retire, because that's his goal. Yeah, I know. I don't know how to say it though, Joe.
I think it's Strohsnyder.
We're gonna just call him Joe Smith, because I can say Smith.
Because I too have a meat space last name that has a lot of extra letters in it, so I'm pretty sure it's Strohsnyder.
Yeah, there we go. He put in a phonetic spelling of it, so there we go. Anyway, thanks to Joe Smith for letting me take over his stream tonight. Because my brain is shut off. And thank you everyone for joining and agreeing to participate in this. This has been a blast. I'm probably going to do this about 2 to 3 times a year. So this is not going to be the last one for sure.
I
and thank you everyone.
I want to come back, me.
Okay. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Ring the bell. There's only 2 episodes a month, the 1st and 3rd of the month, so you're not going to get inundated with a bunch of notifications from us. So I am
Thanks
trying
so
to think about.
much.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and
you.
have a
Thank you.
great night.
Thanks,
Good to
everybody.
see you.
Bye.
Hold on, don't get
Thank
too
you all.
excited.